Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Aaron Bird, CEO of Bizible. Come on up. Russell Wilson.
Right, Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Just hold that down here. You'll be on. There you go.
Cool.
Well, awesome. You guys can hear me okay? There's a fine. Okay. Well, thanks for coming. Appreciate you all being here. And thank you for being here.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's good. Aaron and I have known each other for, 6 years-ish?
I think that's about right.
Yeah. So I remember
You're like my sales mentor early on.
Yeah, early on we were talking.
Like, how do we sell things? We need help.
Yeah, exactly. How do we sell this thing? We didn't have a thing yet. Well, so let's just kind of start. What I always think is interesting about your story, one is because I know it well, but two is that you went at it you just went at it like, I'm just going to do this. I don't necessarily know how to do it, but we're just going to do it.
Right.
Let's find smart people to help me, and we'll just figure it out along the way, which is great. I mean, that's the kind of true, characteristics of an entrepreneur. So tell us kind of some of that early stage stuff, like, before it had let's go pre-model, before we're
right.
The business model you're in now. Kind of tell us that side, how that started.
Yeah.
With Microsoft and,
Yeah, I'll give you like even the pre-leaving Microsoft, because there's some context there. Like, I always knew I was going to start a company, and I had this kind of grand vision of I'm going to work as a kind of software developer, managing teams, save up a bunch of money, and then I'm going to take that money and go start a company, right? So that was like I got out of school in my early 20s, and that was my plan. I'm like, I'll start a company maybe when I'm 30, and I want to save up a decent amount so I can use my money to start a company.
Yep.
So I'd saved up a bunch of money. I'd moved to a job at Microsoft up here in Seattle, so I had a house, I had a condo in LA where I moved from that I was renting. I had a condo in Seattle as well. And I'd saved up like $250,000 in cash plus these condos, right? So I was getting close. I was like, I want about $500,000 before I start a company.
Sure.
So 2008 happens, and the housing market in both go 50%.
Sure, yeah.
The renter that my house in LA sues me. She like slips and falls. It's like this huge disaster. So I went from having like 250 grand in the public stock market and some assets in 2 condos to literally zero. It all got wiped out. I actually had to borrow 20 grand from my parents to close the condo, to sell the condo in LA. So I was negative 20 grand, coming out of like 2009 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it was like, so lesson 1 was, plans are irrelevant in startups. Like, your perfect plan sucks. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Like, just jump, right? So that was, and this was even before I left Microsoft. So that was the first thing. I was like, I spent a year while paying my parents back, and then also just thinking like, my whole plan. There's no way I'm going to save up money. It's going to take me 5-6 years, right? Like, or whatever. It's just, there's no way. So I need something different. So anyway, so the end of 2010. I was, taking kind of the Christmas break off, thinking through everything, and I was like, I just have to jump. I just have to go start a company. I can't. The planning doesn't work, and so came back to Microsoft, put in my notice, and that was that. So now one thing I did get to do is when I over break, I called some people that like. Since I told a bunch of people, hey, I'm going to start a company someday, and I had a bunch of friends and family that were like, whenever you do, call me. I think you do well. And so I was able to raise a little bit of money from friends and family so that we could just kind of get going. Because I didn't have any money because it was all gone, right? So
and you need money.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So anyway, so that was kind of the first lesson, and I left Microsoft with half a dozen or so ideas, things that I had seen along the way. Yeah. Bizible, the way it is today, was actually kind of one of those, and something I had seen when I was in Bing, and Bing ads. But so I had, and they were all different. Like, it was like how to solve the mobile app distribution problem, how to help businesses measure ROI. We had lots of like how small businesses could get found online, which you remember that one.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it was in some of them, how help charities raise money, like, you know.
That was
that one, Give It In. So anyway, so I had these ideas, and it was, and we had read about the lean startup methodology, which I highly recommend if anyone's starting a company or wants to. It's pretty well known at this point, but so anyway, I read about that, and I was like, we're going to follow this, and we're just going to like hammer through, you know, what are the assumptions, MVP, right? Not waste time, like the whole philosophy there. But even with that intent, we still ended up wasting a lot of time with bad ideas. And
you don't know the thing. The problem is you don't know when the bad ideas are bad ideas until you go through them and like, holy shit, that was a bad idea.
Exactly. It's and it's hard. Like they can. It's like they have to check, you know, 5 boxes, and if they check 4, you're excited, and then turns out you can't acquire customers for the, you know, the price that it takes, right, and things like that. So so we spent a year and a half just trying different things, like before we actually got revenue. And then we had our first business, which was the one that, you know, the first version of Bizible.
So explain the first version, like. Like, because then there's some context of like where it went, right? So explain explain V.1 of Bizible.
So one of the insights. So my wife's a wedding planner. And so I know a bunch of small business owners in Seattle. So I have a friend that runs like a painting company and photographers and all stuff. The painting company was like our use case. So anyway, so I had seen kind of these small businesses try to get business and try to grow. And so I'd even helped like figured out SEO and how to figure like all the hacks on Yelp and like all the different things you need to do as a small business to get found online. And so that was the first version of Bizible was actually, I mean, it wasn't even, it's not Bizible, we named it Bizible, but it's nothing like it is today, but it was to help small businesses get found online. And so and it was a software platform to do that. And we launched that at the beginning of 2012. We got to 20,000 of MRR within 8 months, something like that. And there was like 7 of us at the time.
And was that pre-Techstars?
So then we applied to Techstars, and so one thing that we realized is that we were helping businesses get found online. These are small businesses, like owner operator. They weren't good at tracking where their business came from, and so we would actually boost their business, but we didn't have a way to prove it. And we knew it was working because we were measuring all the analytics on the background, but we're like, we need a way to show, we're going to hook into QuickBooks, and we're going to tie the stuff we do to the revenue in QuickBooks so we can show the ROI. So we started building out all this like ROI tracking stuff for these small businesses to justify the marketing platform that we were selling to them. And in the process, we had a business and we were marketing online and we were trying to get found. And I was having a hard time measuring like the ROI of our marketing. And so I was like, so this goes back to kind of we had this insight in Bing, and it was like helping B2B companies measure. And so we had the pain firsthand. And then we realized that, you know what, we should just ditch this marketing platform. It's hard to sell to small businesses. Let's take the measurement platform that we've built and go up market and sell to much bigger businesses. And so that was through Techstars and then post Techstars, and then we raised our round through Madrona.
Post Techstars.
And
in those early days, Aaron, you know, where were the things that you were able to kind of iterate quickly from? Where were the things what did you learn how to learn quickly? Because I remember you and Peter, you know, just hacking away at it, and his co-founder's a coder as well. So
I think so we took Lean Startup, and eventually, after we really kind of mastered it, took it one step further. And it wasn't just about creating an MVP. It was actually about selling before you build. So we had this philosophy of the only way you know that someone will buy it, that they'll buy it at a price point that you can cost effectively build it and acquire them for, and that you're selling to the right buyer, that they can actually sign and buy, like all the go-to-market problems that can happen. The only way you can kind of do an MVP all the way to the end is to get somebody to sign a check. And so after about a year of kind of really figuring out how to do startups and going through all these ideas, it was like, we're only selling before we build. And so the first version of Bizible, we got 3 checks before we started writing code. And so even today, I mean, now we have hundreds of customers, but we still have that mentality, and we want to validate in the market before we build something, and we oftentimes sell before we build. I mean, we'll tell them like, we don't have this today, we're going to build it, we'll have it done by this date, and now we have a bigger reputation and stuff, so people are much more likely to believe it and stuff like that. But or we have customers that we have goodwill with, so it's a lot harder when you're like, not only do we not have a product, we don't have a business, but I want you to give me a check so I can go build that thing.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, you don't know who we are.
Yeah, and you don't know who we are. But I think it's like startups are hard, and it's like pick which hard problem you want to solve, right? Building it is hard, but we realize that figuring out the hard problem, how to sell before you build to whatever market you're in, that's hard, but it's worth spending the time, because then if you can do that, like you've figured, it's better than MVP, right? Like you've proven everything out. So.
That's that trick that before you ever have your service, put an ad on Facebook or Google or whatever, and just people click on it and expect to get something. I mean, that's what you should. I mean, that saves you so much headaches.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you have something that can be sold completely online, then you can run ads. You can have a website that says it's going to do what it's going to do, and then you can say, sign up here and put in your credit card, and just throw their credit card away. Obviously, you're not going to bill it because you don't have anything done yet, but just see, will they put in their credit card? Essentially, you've sold it now, right?
Yeah.
And then you email them, and you're like, okay, well, it's going to be 3 weeks before we deliver this, or whatever it is. But if you can do that, you learn so much more. We spent so much time building in a direction that was wrong, and that cuts it out.
Yeah, it absolutely cuts it out. And so what things did you in those early days when it's you and Alex and Andy what did you guys learn that you're still doing today? So let me give some context because the audience. So they had an office down in Soto, and it was like 7 guys and 4 interns, and people running around this crappy little office.
Right by the dump.
Right by the dump.
You can smell the dump.
And the restaurant place, you smell the Japanese.
Yeah.
It was a direct marketing place that had a bunch of like Asian food just was reeked through the office.
Right, they would cook in the building.
Yeah.
It was a mess. It was so gross. When it would rain, the walls would bleed with water, so water would seep through the wall and the paint would bubble out. Alex still has a video of him pressing one of those things and water shooting out. It's
it was an awesome place.
Yeah.
Good choice.
It was a good deal though.
It was a great deal. It was a great deal.
Low rent. Exactly.
So in those early days, what did you learn there that you're still doing today? What 1 or 2 things, or maybe there's nothing. Well,
I think the sell before you build is still true, right? I mean, even though we know way more about our market, we have customers, we have revenue, we still can make a mistake, right? We could still make an assumption and be wrong about it. So I think making sure someone will buy what you're selling, right, before you start building it. You can't always do exactly that as you get bigger, but we still do it as much as we can. And some people think you're doing your customer a disservice if you sell them something that doesn't exist. The reality is you're doing them a service because it's a good thing, because you're trying to figure out what they actually want, right? The worst thing you could do is go and build something for them that they don't actually want, and so anyway, it's kind of it's counterintuitive there, but so we still definitely do that, and I think being lean in general, just kind of really watching costs, and we've always done that, hence the rent at the place by the dump. And then being connected to customers, I think as you get bigger, it's easy to kind of not talk to customers, especially as a CEO. It's easy to I have a VP of product, Brewster's going to take care of this or whatever. I still need to be talking to customers. I still have to stay in tune with the market and how our product's being perceived and everything. So really being customer focused, we've always had that, and I think even if we're 10,000 employees, it's something we'll still have. Yeah,
exactly. And where in the again those early days, where were the things that you look back now on and say, okay, here are the things that we did really, really well, and then here are the things that we just totally screwed the pooch on. Obviously one of them is you spent too much time, but kind of more operational things or cultural things or hiring the wrong people or all those things that you have to do when you're small. What were the things that you would give advice to somebody saying, here's the mistakes I made, don't do these?
I think on the hiring front, when you have a really pressing hire and you have someone you really have to, like, you're feeling pain as an organization because this person's not in that role yet, it's really easy to say, when you're interviewing candidates and you're getting people that are good but not great, it's really easy to say, you know what, in the next 6 months, we'll be better off if I have someone good in this role than if I have no one in this role, right?
Yeah.
And that's true for the next 6 months. The problem is after that.
7 through.
Yeah, through infinity or whatever, right? So the cost of having to replace someone, both for you and them, is way too high. And so I think it's hard to resist that urge and just say to the team, like, we're going to keep this pain going because we haven't found the perfect person yet. But I think that's one that we made mistakes early on, just because it seemed like the easy out. But
well, yeah, you feel like you needed a body, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like the cost of not having them is so high, but in the end, it's much worse. So I think keeping a high bar for hiring, even if it means, all the things that aren't happening because you don't have that person yet.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, right? Especially early, it's hard to recruit people. Why are they going to bet on you? And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges in early stage startups.
Yeah, is just getting getting them to even sit down with you to discuss is sometimes even hard, right? So where is the let's talk about that hiring piece, because that is interesting, because when you're talking about 4 or 5 people, right?
Yeah.
And you're hiring number 6. I mean, that's number 6 is 1/6 of the company.
Right.
It's a pretty significant hire, right? So what things did you learn then in that process?
Yeah.
Like,
I think this may be obvious too, but people use the term like athletes, right? And not like physical athletes, but people that can do a lot of stuff, right?
Sure.
That
generalists.
Generalists that you could put them on marketing, you could put them on sales. Like, I think in the early days, hiring for culture and then hiring for that generalist kind of athlete role, because you don't know 2 months from now what you're going to be doing or what you need them doing, and specializing too early. You go get like the perfect content marketing person because you need content marketing, well, and then you tell them, like, I need you to go to a field event and work a booth, right? And they're like, I've never done that before. So that may be obvious, but I think just really early on, just hiring, not so much for even their skills or their resume, but just like, can you hand them the ball and they'll run with it, and then the culture fit is really big too.
Yeah.
Like, do they have the same values? I think perseverance early on is everything. So somebody that's gonna really be in for the long haul, and I think we got really lucky.
Alex.
Yeah. Even our first 20 hires, like even today, I think we've been really fortunate with just having a culture of people that are really all in for the company.
Yeah.
But your first 10 people have to all be like that. And it's going to be hard. Like maybe you're going to miss payroll, right? And you're going to say, hey guys, I can't pay you this month. Like, I'm going to make it up to you next month, or once we close this deal, or everyone's going to have to take half as much or whatever. And hopefully that doesn't happen, but you need people that are going to be in it and be able to do that.
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah. I've done it. I mean, I've totally done that. It's it's a brutal conversation, but part of the deal. And in the product development, I mean, you've got Peter to help you build stuff. Is there anything that you would say when you're not building, not the first one, because you're, like I say, let's just assume that we've got something we know people will pay for, but to get from that stage to something that can start to scale at some level, not necessarily at breakneck speed, but what are some tricks to get from, I know people will pay for this, got a couple customers, to now I can have 1,000 customers, right? What are some tricks that you guys have done? And again, because you were lean, the whole time.
Yeah. I think on the product side, I think most entrepreneurs can follow their instincts on like, what do customers need? What do I need to build? The hard part, I think, is the go-to-market or the customer acquisition, kind of if you're in B2C or B2B. But and I think and it takes a lot of hustle. Like you have to find areas that are kind of unexploited for whatever reason. If you buying AdWords is probably not going to work for most startups, right? It's like, A, you don't have the money, and B, even if you did, it's like
So competitive.
you're competing against established companies that have lots of resources, so they can bid a lot higher. So you have to find areas where, like I think of it a lot. I think of marketing investments a lot like the stock market. In the stock market, if you want to do better than market returns, you have to do things. You can't just buy the S&P 500, right? That'll do what the market does. So you have to find things that other people think are undervalued, or that are undervalued because other people think that they're not worth what they're actually worth. And so marketing is the same way, and sales. Like, you have to find areas where no one has spent any time because they didn't think it was going to work, and you found it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs find like hacks that are really only work for like their use case or their product. Like one thing when we were launching Bizible as we know it today, Salesforce was deprecating this product called Salesforce for Google AdWords. So it was Salesforce had given away this free thing that connected Salesforce to Google AdWords, so you could measure the ROI of AdWords inside Salesforce. And so we knew that it was being deprecated, and it was like 2 months out. It was like April 15th or whatever. They're cutting it off, and so what we did is we crawled the web. So that it had a script tag. You had to put a script tag on your website for this thing to work.
So you knew everyone had it.
Yeah, so we crawled the web looking for the script tag. We got back a list of domains. We crawled the domains to get a phone number, and then that was our lead list. And we just called in and we were like,
hey, we know.
Hey, I'm Aaron with Bizible. You've got a Salesforce feature that's dying in 2 months. It's on your website, and we've got the solution. And we signed up like 40 customers in 6 weeks or something like that. It was it was crazy. And so it's like, is that going to work for you? No, of course not. Like, not everybody could do that, but there's probably something like that, where there's a hack where you could just figure out like how do you create demand, or how do you create urgency, and kind of get after it.
Yeah. And that's, I think one of the things that you hear is that's the marketing guy's job, but it's everyone's job to find that hack.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely the CEO, everyone's job, and for a while too. I mean, I think about demand and going to market a lot even now. So
yeah, exactly. And where in the in your cycle, you've raised 3 rounds, if you don't include the small one, the first one.
Yeah. 3 rounds if you don't include kind of angel.
Yeah. So in that process, tell us the first round, like how hard or easy was that? It was a bit easier because you went through Techstars. You had a little bit of cred behind you.
Yep. But, we were in Techstars, which helped a lot. Like the just kind of cutting through the noise. And I mean, I think it was. We got lucky. So Len from Madrona led the round. He had a thesis around accountable media, so he had invested in a lot of companies that have to do with like making media or ad buying accountable, and that's what we were doing. So I think even our next round where scale led it, Stacy had a thesis around marketing ROI as well. So like I think one piece of advice, at least for me, I mean, in hindsight, I got lucky because I just, I fished, every possible pond, and then was like, oh, well, here we got a fish here, and I think in the end, it was what happened is that, these guys had thesis around what we're doing. So I think if you can find, if you're doing a mobile app for gaming or whatever, it's like go find VCs that have been investing in that space, because they'll have a thesis around mobile gaming, and it may not work with your idea, but it's way better than just like knocking on random doors, right? And so up until so actually all of our rounds were folks that before I talked to them, in their mind they're like, I like the space, I think I want to invest in it. And I think that if you can find a way to get that via public information and go target those investors.
Yeah, there's Crunchbase, there's lots of...
there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah. And you're, in your raising money, adventure, what was the hardest part of that for you, just as an individual? What was the hard for you?
Well, almost running out of money. That's definitely.
Well, sure. But that's
like
normal,
the stress, right? I mean, like when we got into Techstars, when we got notified that we were in Techstars, I had 2 months left runway. Otherwise, we were going to, the payroll conversation, right? Like, what are we going to do here? So, and I was starting to raise an angel round, and it was just brutal. Like, I was about a month or 6 weeks in to trying to do that, and it, like, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to raise in time for us, running out of money, and And then once we got into Techstars, we got the $100,000 note from Techstars, and then the investment. So it was like it kind of took off from there. But I think just the stress of like the doomsday cash out date ahead of you. Once you have people on payroll, and so I think that's probably. Yeah, that's the hardest thing because it's all just unknown. Like you don't know if you're going to be able to raise. And
is there any way you can avoid that?
Well, I mean, if you don't take on employees at all, right? Like, and if you can live without taking any money yourself for a while and not have to, but it's hard. Like, you have 2 or 3 people trying to start a company and do all this stuff. I mean, it just so. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's. I think that's the hardest thing. I think, most entrepreneurs are committed, and so really the only way that you die is you run out of cash. And so managing that carefully and not being optimistic about how long it's going to take to raise, because I think I see that a lot. Like I mentor startups, and I see that in early stage a lot, where they're like, oh, well, I'll start raising once I have 4 months and cash in the bank, and you just don't know if you're going to be able to raise, and cutting it that close is tough. So. I think it's. I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, but the gist of that is it's never too early to raise money.
It's never too early to raise money.
Or at least talk to people
and raise as much as you can. Like, I talk to so many startups that are like, oh, I'm worried about dilution, and like, no, you're gonna need it. You don't realize how much you're gonna need. Dilution doesn't matter. It's grow the pie, right? I mean, like, I've never met an entrepreneur that was like. That their regret was like, oh, I had this exit, but I had 10% of the company. If I would have had 12, it would have been a lot better, right? Like, it's like, no, I tried to start a company and I ran out of money. That's what everybody says, right? Yeah. So just raise all you possibly can, even if you don't like the terms. If whatever you can get, do it. And that's something that we did early on, which helped a lot. Like when we raised the Madrona round, I went out asking for $700,000, and we raised $1.7 million, and we needed every dime of it, in the end. Even though my whole plan was like we can do it with $700,000. So I think if you have the ability to take more, whatever the cost. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Don't worry about the equity part of it. It's the least of your problems, or at least will be. Most likely will be. If you're telling a new entrepreneur, what are the 2 things that you, or 3? I gave you 3 things. What are the 3 things that you have to avoid at all costs? What would those 3 things be? Let's assume one of them is running out of money.
Yeah. I mean, mishires are tough. Like that sets you back a long time. And then not. Yeah. I'm all about staying connected to the customer, making sure you're solving the right problem. Like that. We did it for over a year where we spent way too much time. I see every startup do it where entrepreneurs are builders, right? And so their instinct is they don't want to spend time finding a problem. They want to spend time solving a problem. Sure. And so once they think they found the right problem, they start trying to solve it. And it's like, no, spend all your time early on finding the right problem and make sure it's the right one.
Yeah, and just then drill down and hammer away at it. And if you, here's the question I'd love to ask everyone is, when you were a kid, where did you earn the first dollar that wasn't from a relative? How did you earn that dollar, and how old were you?
Yeah, I had a paper route in the 5th grade. In 7th grade, we went to Mexico for 3 weeks to Cancun. Or actually Cozumel, near Cancun, and my mom was like buying jewelry because they sell like silver stuff, right? Sure. So that was one of her things. She was like, so I was with her, hanging out with her. I spoke a little Spanish from middle school Spanish, and so I started like checking the prices of silver and all this stuff, and so we're there the first week, and Tuesday comes, and these cruise ships come in to Cozumel. Yeah. And I go out with my mom. We're looking at jewelry, and I'm like, you can't sell silver at that price. What are you talking about? And then I realize I'm like, they jacked the prices because the cruise ships are here, right? Yeah. And so then the next week, and I realized that some of these guys at the front of the market, the ones like right by the water, would sell out of jewelry when the cruise ships would come in. So the next week on Monday, I went into the back of the market and I bought a bunch of silver jewelry. And then I went to the front of the market on Tuesday at the end of the day when they were all out of jewelry, and I sold them the jewelry for more than I bought it for. So
Nice.
I did this like every week for those 3 weeks, and so I made money in Mexico, and then like my parents were like, how do you have money? I'm like, oh, I'm selling jewelry amongst the merchants. like what are you doing? Are you serious? Like, so there's all this, like in 8th grade I ordered pizza at the school and sold the slices, and for like 3 times what I bought it for.
Exactly.
And there's like all these examples of early on doing stuff like that.
Did you ever have the flavored toothpicks? Do you remember the flavored toothpicks? My brother and I literally got kicked out of school. We got suspended for 3 days because we were selling flavored toothpicks.
Nice.
There used to be hot cinnamon, right? Hot cinnamon.
Oh yeah.
And we used to, we were selling them, and we got booted for 3 days.
Everyone was addicted to the cinnamon.
We were selling a shit ton of them.
First one's free.
Yeah, first one's free, right? It's like the razor blade, get them in early.
I like it.
Where is the, in your business, like, where are the opportunities if now, let's just say you sell the company, next month. What do you do next? Besides take a vacation?
Definitely go back at it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know you're going to do that, but I'm just saying, what's the opportunity?
Like what ideas? Or,
yeah.
So, first off, so structurally, I want to start like 2 or 3 companies at once. And like I want to do Elon Musk, basically, right? So, so I have a whole plan on what I want to do there around like raising a venture fund and not charging any carry and no admin fees, just so that I can have the money so that I can go like start a bunch of companies with, and like try to disrupt the VC world. Be like, why are they're charging all this carry, whatever.
Why do you do that?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I want to, like, I have a bunch of ideas, and I'm like, next I want to do more than one at a time,
Yeah.
We'll see, like, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I can't actually do that. But my favorite idea right now is augmented reality for B2B. So take, like, business travel. So IBM flies people all over the globe just so they can sit in a room together, look each other in the eye, and have a meeting. Turns out, like, you could put on some glasses and like pretty much that person would be sitting right there in front of you. You could whiteboard without markers, and like it would just show up on the whiteboard or whatever. So there's lots of other applications like B2B sales, right? Like people that actually have to do field sales can have like 1 meeting a day because they have to travel. Inside sales, you can have 8 in a day because it's all over the phone. Well, what if I just send you AR stuff so that we can have a meeting, and I have 8 meetings throughout the globe, like, in one day, and sell $1 million software or whatever. So I think there's AR for kind of B2B to disrupt business travel.
Sure. Yeah, it is just to reduce that cost.
The idea is yours, okay?
Yeah.
Till I do it, go for it.
Exactly. Ideas are cheap.
Just give me some credit.
Put me at the bottom down here.
Yeah, exactly. Right, ideas are cheap. Yeah, exactly. They're worthless, in fact.
Exactly, they are until actually you've executed on it. What's been if you look back the last 5 years, what's been the most fun? What's been the most enjoyable part of it?
Yeah, growing a team. Like Alex and Andy, right? They both run teams now. They got,
the responsibilities.
People reporting. Yeah, responsibility, exactly. So just watching those guys grow, I mean, like the whole company, right?
Sure.
I think just developing people that are really passionate, a lot of potential. I think that's the coolest thing. I think if we build a really big company, then kind of looking at what we can do with even the people starting now could like be VPs and go on to start their own companies and stuff. So I think that's that, and then second is like helping customers. Like I think both of those things are kind of seeing the value of helping your team, and then also the value that customers get is the thing that I like the most.
And I want to go back to the raising money, because it's a hard thing, and a lot of people don't do it or haven't done it, and they need to do it, so they're kind of flying blind.
Yeah.
Like, and if you were going to advise me, like, hey Mike, this is the things you should do to go raise money, like, what would be the couple of things you would tell that person, tell me, or tell?
Yeah.
Like, what are some things that you learned in that process? Like, one, not every company is a VC company that needs to raise venture capital.
Yep.
For sure. But let's just say you need to raise angel money, any kind of money. Like, what are the things you would tell that person?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious thing is like get as much traction as you can before you raise. Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs go out early and try to raise and spend too much time trying to do it. I mean, it's hard, right? Like, if you need money to get traction, then it's this chicken or egg problem. But I think one thing that we did in that round that when we were in Techstars, so we went initially for angel money because we knew it's easier to get a couple checks from angels than to get a big check from a VC. We positioned the round saying we're going to raise $700,000, knowing that it was a target that we could get to with angel rounds, and it was something that would be enough that a VC would be have an appetite for. If you say if you go out and say I'm going to raise $3 million, then you're never going to get there with angel checks. And if you say I'm going to raise $100,000, then VCs aren't going to be interested, right? So we wanted kind of in the middle to be able to fish kind of out of both ponds. And then what we did is we started to get like commitments from angels, like if you get to $300,000, I'll write a check, right? So like the soft circling, as they like to call it in the startup world. So we started a soft circle in the sense that they didn't write checks yet, but they said if we got to a certain milestone and usually a certain amount raised, then they would write a check. And so we got kind of 400,000, softly committed like that. And then that we were able to use that to force the VC's hand and say, you're not going to write a $100,000 check, so I'm only raising 700. I already have 400. So if I get another 100 or 200, like you're out, right? You can't get in this round anymore. Yeah. So kind of using the two to create urgency. And then on the angel side, hey, I'm getting a lot of interest from VCs, and if they write a check, they're going to take the whole thing. So if you don't commit, then you could be out of this, right? And so finding ways to kind of like find angles to create urgency, because investors are, they have no incentive to write a check now. If they could, they'll just wait forever, and eventually once you have traction, they'll invest. So you need to find a way to create scarcity, urgency. I think there's other ways. If you're raising an angel round and you're doing a note where you have a cap and a discount, so convertible note, you can do things like, okay, the cap on the convertible note today is $2 million. But in 3 months, it's going to go to 2.5. And so you can use things like that to try to get them to commit earlier. Yeah, exactly. Or once we hit this milestone, which we're really close to, we're going to ratchet up the valuation because we're further along. And so there's things like that to try to create urgency. On the angel side, they're much more. They're thinking much more like a person, not a business, when they think about investing. So a VC is investing other people's money. They're in the business of investing. And angels, they're doing it with their own money and that kind of thing. So I think kind of playing those motives a little bit, like we would, when we were talking to angel investors, we try to find out when they would meet. So we would target a group, first of all. So you have kind of an angel that if this guy invests, then these 10 others will follow, right? So you've targeted that group. And then what we would do is we try to figure out when do those 10 people meet with each other. And you can just ask them like, oh, I know Bob, like when are you going to see him next or whatever. And like, oh, we get brunch every Tuesday to go over all of our ideas. Okay, great. So, all right, so Monday night, send them both an email about all your traction, right? So that when they meet on Tuesday morning, maybe one of them brings it up and says, oh, I've been looking at that too, and so trying to create this like this buzz, right? And so we had this social graph of all the angels in Seattle and when they're meeting, and tried to like leverage that to that information to kind of help create kind of their interest. So
So it is a it's not something you just go willy-nilly and just figure out along the way. You really need to put some planning into it.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think of everything's a game, right? Like, how do I beat this game? And fundraising is the same thing.
Feel free to put some questions in your head, guys, when you're ready. Where do you think the opportunities for your company, and I'm saying your business, what you're in, B2B, where do you think the opportunities are for you as a company, a year, maybe say 2 years out? Like, where do you see what's interesting for you as a, I mean, don't tell us the secrets, but like. You mean like kind of where in the market? And stuff like that? Where do you see that going in your world?
Well, I think, this is kind of specific to our business, but we we started off helping marketers measure the ROI of what they're doing, so that they can justify spend, get more budget, do a better job optimizing. And in the end, you only care about measuring the past so that you can impact the future. Right? So the next phase for us is really about building another layer of software on top of what we've done to help plan and predict the future. So there's a lot of machine learning and using aggregate data across all of our customers to understand trends and things like that. So I think that's kind of the next phase is how do we use all the data we have and to have a product that's very focused on the future, not just measuring the past. And I think that, of course, that has more value for our customers. We'll get some more of that value in return, and we can go after bigger customers with that kind of product. And so there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense, other than even just the reason why they measure the past is to solve for the future. And so even 4 years ago, we knew that's the direction we should be heading once we master getting all the data and the insights about the past, which took a long time.
Yeah, and you think you've figured that? I mean, think you've got that part figured out?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's always things we need to improve and get more reporting and stuff, but the core of what we do, we've definitely figured out, and now it's about kind of layering on more value on top.
Yeah. And where is the? Let's go take a different approach to this. Where if you were going to start a company today, right? And you needed to hire, 5 people. How would you find those 5 people? Let's just say you knew the roles you needed, but you needed to find 5 people. What are the tricks or hacks that you use to find people?
Yeah, I think, the first folks were just people I knew, that believed, right? Because they had to find believers,
exactly.
Right? When they look at their offer from Amazon and their offer from you,
it's not even
if they're
close.
not believing, they're not going to take it, right? So, I would start there. I think your network, or if you the classic, you need to hire a developer. You hear that a lot. I think what's your domain? You sell property management software. Go find a developer that just really believes in that space or something, right? Because you need an angle. Again, I think you're not going to just go on LinkedIn and just go search. I'm going to hire salespeople, so I'm going to go just randomly reach out to salespeople on LinkedIn. The kind of stuff today we can go do that. We can go target it, do searches and stuff, because we have the resources to get after folks or hire recruiters. But yeah, I don't know. You got to find people that really believe in what you're doing, which probably means they know you and they believe what you're doing.
Yeah, or at least know of you, right? They're friends of friends at the very least.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
It's very hard to walk up to some guy that doesn't even know you. Like, hey, you should join a company.
Yeah.
We're really cool.
Yeah.
I got this great idea.
I can pay you a third of what Microsoft will. But.
Yeah, exactly. Where is the? So you've been in Seattle for years and years. Compare that to other cities. Why does your company based in Seattle? Why here versus Austin or Boulder or
or Silicon Valley.
Or Silicon Valley. Of course,
I think it's the best place to be building a technology company. For as far as technical talent, we've got 2 of the biggest software companies in the world in our backyard. So you can poach all day long there, or they want to join startups, right? And so if you look at the ratio of developers working at big companies to startups that are hiring developers, in San Francisco it's the opposite. There's Salesforce, that's about it. As far as big companies, and then there's 10 billion startups, right? Here we've got Microsoft and Amazon, and then not that many startups, and so a lot of people at those big companies want to join a startup, and so I think it's a great place to be hiring technical talent for startups. So if you're building a software company, it's better than anywhere else. I think sales and marketing is a little harder because it's not. So we sell B2B, so we need sales and marketing. Someone like OfferUp is more they need kind of growth marketers and folks that can do stuff like that. But for us, sales and marketing is harder to hire. In San Francisco, I could hire salespeople that have sold MarTech to the enterprise, that like really have a Rolodex. Yeah, it's like, they grow on trees in San Francisco, right? They're super expensive, but they're everywhere. In Seattle, there's less of that. Like, there's not that many startups that sell to MarTech in the enterprise and stuff. So, so you have to you have to do more around kind of getting people and building them.
Yeah.
And because you're not going to be able to hit all your hiring goals by hiring experienced people off the street. You have to get people earlier in their career and then help them grow and kind of build it up. And so, that's been our recipe for solving that problem on the sales side. But yeah, I think it's there's no place I'd rather be building a company for sure.
Yeah. Well, and there's a bunch of big companies coming in here and doing the same thing, right? Their companies are they're creating these satellite offices.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, there's lots of talent here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think every large software company has an office here.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free, questions, raise your hand if you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, you wish you had, 7 people and 4 interns in the beginning?
Not even that.
Yeah, depending on kind of when you count. It was just me, and then my 2 co-founders joined me about 3 months later. I think when we joined Techstars, we had, I think, 5 full-time and 2 interns, something like that, full, including the founders. Yeah.
I was just wondering, how you managed that, financially, having all those people. Did you guys not have to pay yourself salaries, or you can undermarket, or how did you afford things?
Yeah.
Before the financing.
Yeah, you have to pay undermarket. Back to that, you got to find somebody that believes in the dream. So you give them equity, right? Which hopefully that's going to be worth a lot later. But yeah, you definitely have to pay undermarket. And I think I think you'd be surprised too. There's a lot of developers at Microsoft and Amazon that have got a pretty good nest egg saved up, and they want to join a startup. And you just say, look, hey, give us a year, right? You're gonna, sure, you could make 175 at Microsoft. I'm gonna pay you 90. So that's $85,000 for that year. That it's an experiment for you. So you can do things like that, right? Where in their mind you're mitigating the risk, and then you're like, okay, in a year, once we get financing or we get this customer, I'm gonna raise your salary and stuff. And by the way, you're gonna get all this equity, right? So, but you have to pay. You just can't. You have to pay undermarket and get people that really believe in what you're doing.
And were all those actual kind of co-founder positions, or were some of them more senior, very early developers?
Yeah. I think co-founders are pretty distinct from first employees, mostly around equity and stuff like that. But you definitely want co-founders too. If some people try to start a company on their own, and you just it's really hard. I think it's so impossible. Startups are already impossible, and it makes it just literally impossible.
Yeah,
so
it's really brutal.
Yeah, so you've got to have co-founders. Some of you have to be able to build software, be technical, right, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Your sell to build model, I've seen a bunch of enterprise software companies try it.
Yeah.
What happens is you wind up building the wrong thing because you're building something for a specific customer. How do you avoid getting into that trap?
Yeah, especially if you're selling to the enterprise, right? If you're selling to really big companies, then you do have the risk of building something too custom for them. I think you need more than one data point, so you've got to have other folks you're talking to, and you can triangulate, the Venn diagram of what's the common requirements, and then what are the outliers that I know I'm not going to be able to sell to anyone else. I think that's one, but honestly, you're going to build if you're selling to the enterprise and you don't have any customers, you're a startup, you're brand new, you're going to have to build custom stuff for them. That's just the way it works. And that's why they're doing it. That's why they're signing up with you. For us, we went after more SMB and mid-market initially, where we didn't have to build custom things and they didn't have that expectation. So I think the other route to go is to go after mid-market and kind of get your reputation and then start to move up, which is what we did and a lot of SaaS companies do. But if all you sell is software for data centers that have more than 10,000 CPUs, well, you got to sell to the enterprise. And so if that's the case, then you're going to build custom things, and that's just the cost of doing what you're doing.
Good.
So there's several companies doing like marketing attribution now, like Google being one of them. How do you continuously like innovate in this space, and how do you validate new product features?
Yeah, so I think so one thing that we focus on the B2B market. So all of our customers they have a sales team and a marketing team working together to sell to a business. So Google's attribution, there's others like Convertro, Adometry, which Google bought. They all focus on more of the B2C model, so like buying online, e-commerce, things like that. So I think focusing on an area that is underserved is really important. If we had gone after like, we're going to do attribution for everyone, then we would have been going head to head with Google, which wouldn't have worked. So we focus on B2B, which if you look at Google, and this was the insight we had at Bing, if you look at Google and Bing, the percentage of media buys, like the percentage of their revenue from advertising that comes from B2B is small. It's in the single digits. So I know that Google's never going to go build B2B attribution the way that they really have to, because it's never going to make the priority list, right? They'll always be like, mobile or whatever the next thing is that they have to focus on. So focusing on a niche that you can own is important. But I think even within B2B attribution, there's probably, 10 or 15 startups now that are coming after and doing what we're doing. So I think you've got to constantly innovate, and you've got to don't rest on your laurels, right? Like I think if you've got to constantly, how do you commoditize what you did yesterday and innovate and build something new for tomorrow? I think Amazon is amazing at that. They just burn the boats like every 6 months, right? It's like as soon as they go to a market, they just cut all the margins out. It's like, how could you follow them? You can't follow them, right? And so I think, and you can do that with margins. You can do it with other elements of kind of creating a moat too. But I think making sure you're constantly innovating and not. I've seen startups that they go into a market, they do really well, and then they just kind of sit there, and they think like, oh, this market's going to grow, and we don't have to keep pushing the envelope, and that usually is a bad thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All the way back.
You said when you jumped into this 6 years ago, you had 5 or 6 ideas. How developed were they when you jumped?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, so my definition of developed is like business plans are worthless, So you can spend all day long in like, the market and the TAM and all this kind of stuff, your Venn diagrams and your all this. The only thing that has any value are real customers with real revenue in the market. So, so I didn't spend a lot of time on kind of, doing business plans or things like that, but they were just ideas. They were like, I saw this opportunity. Like I saw that when you look at the media that people buy from Microsoft when I was there, 5% is coming from B2B. It's an underserved market. We should go look at that, right? Things like that. So they weren't very developed, and I think and you just have to get into them to figure them out.
So once your product is developed, how did you get your first 20 customers or 25 customers or 50 customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got lucky with this ability to this Salesforce product they were deprecating, right? And being able to find kind of this way to get to all those customers, get their phone numbers and call them and tell them that we were replacing it. I think I think you have to find things like that. It's hard to, you can't just do like the common playbook, right? You can do the normal playbook if you have a lot of money, but most startups don't. So you kind of have to figure out a hack to get in front of the people cost effectively.
Talk about how you really scale your sales model.
Yeah.
First point, that was one thing, but at some point you gotta get really methodical, right?
Yep. And in B2B, I think this is, after finding product market fit, this is the second hardest problem. So our first 2 salespeople, Alex and Andy, were crushing it. It was like, great, like we hire this profile, they're going to do the same output, and then it was like the 3rd one failed, the 4th one failed, the 5th one failed. It's like, okay, what's going on? So scaling sales and demand. So in B2B, it's like you have to create demand, then you have to service it, and so you have both of these things going together. It took forever. I mean, if you look at, so 2014, or say 2013, launching the product, we're kind of off to the races and we were ready to start scaling sales. And it literally, we burned 2 years of just of having 2 sales reps that were productive, for 2 years. Like,
Sure.
And yeah, it was, I mean, now we've figured it out, but it's hard. Getting the right sales leader is really important. That's really hard. Back to like, how do you get, a really good sales leader to join your startup? And I think one mistake that entrepreneurs make is they think that they're going to hire salespeople out of the gate. It's like, no, you're the salesperson.
You're the
like,
guy.
You got to go sell.
You're the best sales guy.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're going to be the VP of sales, and you're going to run a team of salespeople. Eventually, you can get a VP of sales, but you can't like outsource this problem. But it's hard. I mean, I don't have a good answer. I'm good at failing there, actually. Like, I failed a bunch, so I can tell you what to do wrong. But I don't know. I think in the end, we got Jason, our current VP of sales. We got the right sales leader, and that made a big difference. And we started to kind of figure out the model and promoting some folks and stuff. But it was hard.
Did Jason bring some things that you just didn't have, like with him? Just
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I think there were 2 things. So Alex was our kind of rep that was doing really well. I promoted him to director to then say, like, mind meld what you know to all these reps. And of course, my board is like, wait, you're taking the guy that's producing all the revenue and you're going to make him a manager, and you're just going to put a bunch of people that have never sold on below him, right?
Yeah.
They're like, don't do that. That's a horrible idea. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, you guys see this all day, and maybe I should listen to you, right? And, so, we did that. Alex did a great job, trained people, got them productive, and then we brought in Jason to kind of like help scale even more. So, both of those were, those were moves I made after failing 50 times. So it was not like it was like
did that first out of the gate, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and that's a tough one. Like, I think every startup goes through that in B2B, where you have a couple good reps. And then how do you scale them? And like, should you promote one of them and have them train? And that doesn't always work out. I got lucky that it worked out with
Yeah,
Alex.
and many times, like you say, it's you selling, right?
Yeah.
You're the best sales guy, so you're selling, and then you're like, oh no, I just need to replace myself with somebody really good.
Yep.
And that's really hard because you have the advantage of being the CEO because there's some cachet involved in that to close deals.
Yep.
Where the new guy comes in, he's just like, oh, I'm just the VP of sales.
Yeah.
Like, well, I want to talk to the CEO. Like,
Yep.
So there's that happens that you just have to plan on. It's.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And you can promise things, right? You know the product really well. Like, you're never, no one's going to sell like a co-founder does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost impossible. Go ahead.
Just wondering what kind of guidance or pressure or goals do you get from the investors, or how often is that communication happen? How you suppose it?
Yeah. Well, so we used to have board meetings every other month. We have them every quarter now, so every 3 months. I have a board meeting tomorrow, actually. So I communicate with my investors every month, or maybe twice a month, like via email, updates, like questions. But board meetings is where we spend most of the time together. I think they're helpful.
Aaron, 1 second. Who's on your board?
Yeah, so Len Jordan from Madrona and Stacy Bishop from Scale.
Okay, so it's just the 3 of you.
Yep, and then Adam Schoenfeld is representing Common too. So he's someone that we
that you brought in.
Yeah, exactly. So so it's the 4 of us, and then we have an open seat for an independent director. So yeah, I think the board helps a lot. They help with metrics, and they've seen a lot of stuff before. So how do you benchmark? They can help with hiring, like Lynn from Madrona. A lot of people know Madrona in Seattle. So if I'm recruiting an executive, I'll leverage Len to get on the phone, and he can talk about why he's so interested in Bizible and excited and stuff. So yeah, I think they're definitely helpful. Not all investors are. I think we're lucky. I hear a lot of horror stories, but it's in the end it is a marriage, right? You take the money you can get, but you definitely think about who you're working with, because you'll be together for 10 years if it works out.
Many years.
Yeah.
It's a marriage.
Yeah. Well, and you can't get divorced.
Exactly.
It's worse than or more committed than a marriage.
Yeah. It's legally, it's much harder to split up.
Yeah. Yeah. Just about impossible.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? I got one more. So, go ahead.
One of the things that I kind of took away from what you were saying in the beginning was ready, fire, aim. Is that?
Yeah.
It's a bit of that.
Yeah, maybe so. I think because you don't know what you're shooting at, I guess. You know, you're going to waste a lot of bullets, and so you have to do a lot of trials. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, having the faith or the confidence, whatever that is, sometimes craziness.
Craziness, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
To think that you're actually going to hit something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Takes a bit of fortitude.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Irrational perseverance, like, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, did you ever think that you need a plan B? Like, for example, you try for 3-4 years, you're still firing but no targets. Did you ever have any such?
No, no. Like, I think if you, it's impossible. It's so hard, especially early, that if you're thinking about a plan B, then don't do it. It's just because you will use plan B. Like, there'll be times that you'll go do that and it will have been a waste. So I think you've got to just, you have to want to do it irrationally. And the expected value is not there either. Like, a lot of, I have friends that are still at Microsoft and they'll meet with me and they're like, oh, I think I want to start a company because I want to make a lot of money. It's like,
that's
no,
not the reason.
You're making the money you're making now, like the money you're going to make for the next 10 years, like the expected value of the two, it is so much higher to stay at a big company. And so you can't do it for the money. You can't do it like as a trial. You've got to just be kind of all in irrationally.
That's a good way to end right there. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.